In the 16th century, Spain dominates the world both politically and economically. This image here is showing Isabel I of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon, and their marriage helps to unify two separate areas of Spain. And then during this time, Spain begins to dominate much of Europe. Isabella and Ferdinand were devout Catholics, and they wanted the Catholic religion to be the only religion in their kingdom. So this is the time of the Spanish Inquisition, where Jews and Muslims were persecuted for their beliefs. So they created an environment where if you did not convert to Catholicism, you were forced to leave. Their allegiance to the Catholic faith eventually leads to a decline of Spanish power. The Inquisitions prohibit new ideas from coming into Spain, as many people are fleeing this area to escape religious persecution. Although we will see some influence from the Italian Renaissance, really this style has little appeal to the Spanish. They prefer lavish surface decoration in their furniture and architecture, and they combine Gothic and Moorish designs for some of their forms and motifs. As we study the Spanish Renaissance, it's important to know that Spain had over 800 years of Moorish influence. The Moors arrived in 711, and they brought many of their Moorish design and Islamic design principles to Spain. For hundreds of years, Christianity and Islam struggled to dominate Spain. Eventually, in the 15th century, the Moors are driven out of Spain. So in the early years of the Spanish Renaissance, we will see the blend of Moorish influence and lavish surface decoration. It isn't until the 16th century where we see the application of high Italian Renaissance design concepts. Eventually, this lavish surface decoration will displace many of the classical plain design principles. 1519 to 1588 is considered the golden age of Spain. Spanish navigators like Christopher Columbus and Cortez begin to acquire fabulous wealth, and they bring that back to Spain. And during this time also, Spain controls most of Central and South America, Florida, Cuba, and the Philippines. In 1588, the Spanish Armada is defeated by Sir Francis Drake of England, and then Spain begins to decline. I do want to briefly mention sumptuary laws because they did influence some fashion and design in Spain during the Golden Age and beyond. Sumptuary laws were laws put in place by the Spanish government to stop individuals from spending more than they could afford. So it was a way to regulate consumption. It was also a way to restrain luxury or extravagance. And there were distinctions between the different levels of society. So, for example, a certain class could not wear a certain fabric or type of fabric, and they were put in place to regulate consumption, but also to make sure that the middle class would never look nicer than the nobility. Political ties with Italy helped to bring some of the Italian Renaissance design concepts to Spain in the late 15th century. At first, we see some of these Renaissance design concepts merge with some of the traditional Spanish forms and motifs because they have a strong medieval design aesthetic and also centuries of Islamic heritage, and this great love of lavish surface decoration. So we see these two concepts blending together. Then very abruptly in the 16th century, we see the monarchy and the nobility prefer these high Renaissance classical design concepts, but it really bears little resemblance to the native Spanish design. So we see that this overall Italian Renaissance design concepts and their application in Spain, it does not last very long. Eventually, the love of ornamentation and decoration asserts itself in the Baroque style, which we'll study in a few weeks. The image on the right is showing a library near Madrid, and this is an example of that classical Spanish Renaissance style. What's unique about this design is that we see some classical ornamentation. So notice the Greek key on the ceiling. We have a barrel vault ceiling, but also notice that it's blended with a lot of surface decoration. The ceiling is actually depicting the 7 liberal arts, so grammar, rhetoric, logic, geometry, arithmetic, music, and astronomy. So here we see the evolution of the Spanish style. Hispano-Moresque is where the Islamic domination is reflected in art and architecture, and that's from the 8th to the 15th century. In the 13th through the 16th century, we see the Mudéjar style, and this is where we're seeing the blending of Moorish and Christian design. Plateresque is from the late 15th to the early 16th century, and we see this transition of Gothic influence to Renaissance design. We also see all over low relief surface decoration. The classical Spanish Renaissance style, often referred to as desornamentado or General style, is based upon the high Renaissance style, which is very plain and severe. And then the Churrigueresque style is where we see all over architectural ornament, and this starts to correspond with the Baroque period. So you can see from the slide here that we will see many different motifs that reflect these different styles. In the bottom, we're seeing the Gothic style in Spanish Renaissance. So we see the pointed arches. In the image above, we see Plateresque style, which we're seeing that all over surface decoration in columns, but then we also see it blended with grotesque and some of the classical design principles. And then on the right, we're seeing the Moorish influence. We're seeing geometric patterns and that tessellation of those geometric patterns. The Mudéjar style appears after the Moors are conquered by the Christians. So remember the 13th to the 16th century. The Mudéjar style blends the Moorish and Christian influence. So they're taking and reflecting the Islamic design principles in a Christian framework. So for example, they're taking a church, which would be Christian, and using geometric designs with panel and band combinations, and that would be the Islamic design influence. They're actually using mostly brick to create many of the forms that reflect this Islamic design style. So let's review the image on the left. We're seeing the Gothic influence and that we see the Gothic arch, the tracery. We're also seeing a Roman influence where we see the Roman arch and engaged columns. But review the building overall and you see that all over surface decoration. And this would be the Islamic influence. As we move into the interiors of the Mudéjar style, we will often see artisanado ceilings. And this is a highly decorative ceiling that has the application of the Mudéjar style in the interior. So it has all over Islamic geometric patterns. It will often be in a barrel vault or a coffered ceiling. And sometimes we will see the blending of human and animal forms into the design. This is an example of the Plateresque style, which is the late 15th to the early 16th century. The term Plateresque comes from the Spanish word platero, which means silversmith. The design of the Plateresque style is very detailed. It has low relief carving throughout the facade of the building, and it's very elaborate in design, and it is found on many of the Spanish Renaissance style buildings. We will also see the application of the Plateresque style to interiors and furniture forms. The Plateresque style was meant to reflect the complex detailed patterns and elaborate ornamentation that originally came from silversmiths or the platero. The all-over ornamentation really defines the style, so although we will see many different motifs like shields, portrait medallions, rinceaux, acanthus leaves, and anthemion in the design, the all-over ornamentation from the Plateresque style really defines the building. The desornamentado style is in direct contrast to the Plateresque style. Desornamentado means unornamented. And it is a direct reaction to the overabundance of decoration and ornamentation that we saw in the Plateresque style. We see this style in the mid-16th century. The style is really characterized by austerity, so it is extremely plain and simple, especially in comparison to the Plateresque style. So when we look at the facade of the building, you'll notice that there is no ornamentation. It's a very plain facade. You'll also notice that there is no ornamentation, architectural elements around any of the windows, and we just kind of see this very grid-like pattern on the facade. Notice also the Roman arches at the bottom of the building. We have just this very simple Roman arch. There are no architectural elements surrounding the Roman arch, so it creates this very plain facade, but when we look at the overall building, it's still very monumental in style. And we see this design style applied to many court and public buildings. At this time, I'd like you to pause the recorded lecture and watch a short video on the Mudéjar architectural style. It will go into detail on some of the stylistic characteristics of that style. When we review Spanish Renaissance interiors, I am not looking for you to be able to identify all the different architectural characteristics like when we look at the exterior of buildings. With the interiors, I want you to focus on a few key stylistic characteristics to help you identify Spanish Renaissance. Number one is ornamentation around doorways. We are seeing the application of Moorish, Gothic, Renaissance characteristics and motifs, especially around those interior and exterior doorways. Second, we're seeing plain walls. So these plain walls are usually a smooth white plaster. If we do see any finishes on the wall beyond that plaster, we will see tile work along the dado area. Remember, the dado area is this lower portion. Next, we will see beamed ceilings or plain ceilings. So here I'm showing a plain barrel vault ceiling, but we will also see beam ceilings set up in like a coffered design, or we will see ceilings set up to reflect that Mudéjar style, the artisanado style, which is the application of geometric complex ornamentation. We will also see shutters on windows and ironwork applied to some ornamentation, but also lighting. The colors in Spanish Renaissance interiors are going to be very saturated, so we will see deep, dark reds, yellows, blues, and greens. Floors are mainly going to be tile, brick, or stone on the first floor, and then when we move up to the upper floors, we will see wood. The important spaces in a Spanish Renaissance home or palace will be decorated, and other areas will be left plain. There are very few furnishings placed within a room, but we will look in detail at many of the Spanish Renaissance furniture styles that were applied to some of these important spaces. In this important secondary source, we're seeing a drawing of the Palace of the Duke of Alba. We're seeing the thick white plaster walls that we would often see in Spanish Renaissance interiors. We're also seeing yesera, where the wall meets the ceiling. And remember, this is a technique of carving plaster that was used in Islamic design, but also by the Moors in Spain and in the Mudéjar style. We're also seeing high beamed ceilings mixed with the artisanado style, so the application of geometric forms on the wood beam ceiling. We're also seeing shutters at the windows, floor tile from throughout the entire space, and then wall tile where the floor meets the wall. And then wrought iron is applied to the windows and then also used in the light fixture. This would be an interior in the Desornamentado style. It is the bedroom of Philip II, King of Spain. The walls are whitewashed and there is a tile dado. So here we're seeing the tile dado right here. We're also seeing this beautiful floor created with clay tile and a herringbone pattern. The overall design of the architectural style of Desornamentado, remember, is very severe and classical in form. We have very plain surfaces and sparse decoration throughout. Another thing that you're probably noticing throughout these interiors is that the furniture does not fill the center of the space. It is lined up around the perimeter of the room. So that ends our lecture on Spanish Renaissance architecture and interiors. The next lecture will focus strictly on furniture and decorative arts.